one is mothers. 3, 2. Some time in the Kings of Tupelo has been devoted to the mothers of the Tupelo oddballs, both Kevin Curtis's mother and Steve Holland's mother, but not much insight into any maternal contribution as to why Kevin Curtis turned out to be a stalker. That, by the way, is the precise word that was used in the legal filings, not my own words, of Kevin Curtis's very own sister when she got a restraining order against him. Nor was there any time devoted as to how or why Queen Steve Holland became an attention-seeking media whore. And as much criticism as there are of those two people are getting, and rightly so, I'd like for you to keep in mind that those two clowns are not the actual villains of the story, because the actual villains are Jim's Little Johnson and the shitbag Stephen Thomason, and his former little sidekick, John Quokka, along with Bob Mueller, Jim Comey, as well as a few others. But ultimately, a man named John Brennan. We're not going to hear from, and Netflix didn't bother showing their moms, probably because they hate them. But so we know nothing about Jim Johnson's compensation for getting bullied by the other girls in his childhood, or how former FBI agent Stephen Thomason struck a deal with the devil, or how his sidekick John Quokka longed to one day become a real boy. But sometimes insight can be gleaned by childhood anecdotes, insight as to how character was formed. So to gain some insight into mine, the best story is actually from my 20s, not necessarily my childhood, not that you asked or not that you cared. So in the 1970s and the 80s, I was a latchkey kid. My parents worked, and they didn't get home until later. My mother, who was a photographer, she ran a bunch of those little next-day photo booths, which is an obsolete, bygone business these days. So I was really raised under dojo discipline back when karate, when martial arts was not carpeted, it was not padded, it wasn't air-conditioned. A lot of people presume that I kind of had a cushy childhood, privileged or something, but believe it or not, that's actually, it was very harsh, living under almost an oriental code, just push all the time. And my mother, this is important, my mother didn't attend any of my karate tournaments while I was a kid, and in part, I guess, because I never asked her to. It wasn't even until 1994, by then I was very much an adult, that I even asked. By then I was an adult, and I had my own, at that time, very high-rated radio program, and my son was 2 years old. I thought then, at the top of my game, celebrated, admired. I was ready to claim the Grand National Championship, so I asked if she'd come. I'd be honored if you would come. I was in my 20s, like I said, and she had seen me train for years. But this would actually be the first time she'd see me compete. So in 1994, the Grand Nationals was held in a huge arena, which is a big domed building, the Civic Center in Mobile, Alabama. So it would be an easy trip. We'd just do a Friday drive straight down Highway 45 from Meridian to Mobile, wake up on Saturday, and I'd compete. She'd take photographs, and I'd hear the crowd chanting for me and cheering for me. And they did. And I won. Over 1,000 competitors there that day. There were 17 in my division alone. But the 1994 U.S. Grand National Champion was me. Not only did I win, I got the gold medal in sparring, but in the forms competition, I scored perfect tens. Perfect tens. That never happens. Never. Actually, I've seen it happen one time before only. It was a guy named Jason Griffin from Tuscaloosa. And it was a tiebreaker round, but still perfect tens. Incredibly rare moment. And it was mine. So we drove back toward Meridian in my tiny mother's new giant white Chevy Caprice Classic station wagon. The Grand Championship trophy was so big that it had to be laid down in the back of the station wagon. My mother had just witnessed probably my biggest triumphant.
This call is from a federal prison.
And so did an entire arena that was kind of celebrating me, cheering Meridian. The first tournament she'd ever come to in my entire life. She heard the crowd. She saw my scores, the perfect tens. She witnessed me autographing broken boards for people afterwards and posing with others who just wanted to be photographed with me. So it was just she and I, though, on the way back. She and I, my giant Grand National Championship trophy, and my gold medal in the back. She even took her own pictures that day, that moment, the moment that her son became the U.S. National Grand Champion. Perfect tens. A historical moment. So somewhere on Highway 45, between Catalonia and Quitman, Mississippi, she turned to me. I was still wearing my gold medal, and she said, "You should have kept your back straight." That's my childhood. I don't know if this gives you any insight whatsoever, but that's how it happened. So for today, that's my three chords and the truth.